saying free Palestine. We hear that on the streets. We hear that on college campuses.
I went to Columbia for grad school, and I saw the same thing in his eyes as I saw in the eyes of all the protesters at Columbia.
Hey, I'm the Rational National. You may recognize me for some controversial statements such as dropping bombs on civilians is bad, starving an entire population is wrong, and defending and funding an ally who's committing a genocide is vile, and calling that out is not, in fact, anti-Semitic. But apparently, these sorts of statements are incredibly controversial. So in this video, I'm going to go over what is making me go insane, and that is having to explain and defend basic empathy. So I'm going to play a couple of clips from CNN. This is the most trusted source in news, delivering some absolute garbage, both from the guests and, at least in one case, from the actual host. So I'm going to start here with Dana Bash and Deborah Lipstadt, who, in the wake of the recent event in DC, have decided that allowing people to live free is incredibly anti-Semitic.
You just heard the alleged killer saying free Palestine. We hear that on the streets. We hear that on college campuses. And there are a lot of people who have been worried that that has been turned into a call to arms and a call to action and violence.
Yes.
Others claim that it's not. What do you think now that we have seen this?
I think there's no question, whatever its initial intent and whatever people were saying initially or meant it, it has become a call for violence, and not violence against Israelis, which is wrong, but violence against Jews. And anybody who tries to separate the two and try to say, oh, I'm just against Palestine, I'm just, against Israel's policies in Palestine or in Gaza, and I'm not anti-Semitic. This was anti-Semitism pure and simple.
What if the killer had just yelled, "I shit my pants"? Would that now be considered a call for violence? Or is it because free Palestine is controversial to you because you do not support a free Palestine? Now, I think it's important to be clear, even though this should be obvious. Random acts of violence against staffers, in this case, staffers at the Israeli embassy, is clearly wrong. The man will be prosecuted for murdering two people, and he should be. So that is obvious. But now to conflate what this idiot yelled out with the actual fight for freedom for Palestinians is disgusting. And this is coming straight from the man himself who is doing the genocide. Here is Netanyahu.
Free Palestine is just today's version of Heil Hitler.
How can you not laugh at how stupid this is? This is the guy who is currently under an arrest warrant for war crimes of starvation as a method of warfare and of intentionally directing an attack against the civilian population, and the crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts. This is an ICC arrest warrant. Why is anybody taking any sort of orders from this genocidal clown? Yet, we are now adopting his idea of what free Palestine means when the reality is obvious. It means allow Palestinians to live freely. This includes not just the ongoing genocide, but the ongoing occupation that has been going on for years well before the genocide. So this whole, let's step back for a second and acknowledge that we are talking about the political implications of a violent act committed by an individual instead of the implications of a state that the US and others are continuing to defend and fund, excusing those state actions where it is impacting an entire population of people. It shouldn't be controversial to say that state actions is more newsworthy than the violent actions of an individual in a local news story. That should be clear. That should be obvious. Yet, if you look at the news right now, you'd think that individual acts of violence are more newsworthy, more important than what an actual state is doing to tens of thousands of people. Now, it's also worth pointing out, Deborah Lipstadt, who was Biden's anti-Semitism envoy, had some thoughts to share on deporting students, the deportations that Donald Trump is currently engaging in, where students who peacefully protested he is trying to remove from the country. Her thoughts on this: I'm coming down right smack dab in the middle. I don't oppose many of the things that are being done. I just wish they'd be done more deftly. She would prefer Donald Trump to more quietly deport students for speech, as opposed to do it in a way that makes news so that we cover it and understand what is actually happening in Trump's fascist state. You see this and you wonder why Biden didn't seem to care at all about the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Now, also worth sharing, her comments from earlier this year, where she made a joke at the expense of the civilians that were caught up in the pager attacks by the Israeli government.
After October 7th, there was a feeling around the world that Israel is weaker. And in the
You want a beeper?
I can give you a few.
Yeah, hilarious. So this was over Israel's concealed explosives inside batteries of pagers sold to Hezbollah. Of course, it hit many civilians as the UN came out vocally, strongly against this, saying a terrifying violation of international law. It's essentially a terrorist attack committed by a state. But because it's committed by a state, it's apparently okay to kill civilians when a state does it. Very bizarre double standards. The attacks reportedly killed at least 32 people and maimed or injured 3,250, including 200 critically. Among the dead are a boy and a girl, as well as medical personnel. Around 500 people suffered severe eye injuries, including a diplomat. Others suffered grave injuries to their faces, hands, and bodies. But worthy of a joke for Deborah Lipstadt. Let me get now to the next CNN clip that I want to share. And my issue with this has more to do with the guest, though I don't think the anchor pushed back as much as she should have.
As you go forward, with what you have seen, can you give us any sense, because you said you looked the shooter in the eyes, can you give us any sense of what you saw in him as he was sort of getting help and people were tending to him as if he too was a victim of seeing this?
Yeah, well, to be clear, I heard about that part because we were in a secure room when he initially walked in. I just saw him screaming and then being handcuffed. But what I saw in his eyes, I mean, I went to Columbia for grad school, and I saw the same thing in his eyes as I saw in the eyes of all the protesters at Columbia. Nothing different between him and them.
But they did not create this horrific shooting. They did not, they didn't shoot.
They gave permission. They gave the permission. And they have called for this. They have called for intifada revolution, which is the same thing he yelled last night.
Do you worry that there will be a conflation, though, of the two, those people who are speaking their mind, who really care about what is happening in Gaza, and those people who are like this person who did this horrific shooting, who intend to do harm?
A conflation. I mean, they are calling for intifada. At Columbia University, they call for intifada constantly. They're not quietly, they're loud. They're loud. You can hear it. They make recordings of themselves. So what's the difference?
Okay. Does it seem like this guy cares about a conflation between people who are fighting for human rights and a killer? He appears to think they're one and the same. Look, I understand the position here as the anchor. You brought on this witness to talk about what happened, what he saw. You probably didn't predict or expect this to get into a territory where he starts spewing absolute nonsense, painting people that are fighting for human rights with an actual killer. But you're in the situation, so it's now your job to explain to people that this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Again, slight pushback there. I almost want to give her credit because of how low the goddamn bar is for CNN. But hard to give credit when this nonsense was spewed by that witness there. So, let's just take a look at how dangerous, how scary these Colombian protesters were. Here's one of the clips from this is about a year ago. Truly chilling stuff. There's also this great piece. I shared this in a video again about a year ago from Zateo. I'm a Jewish student at Columbia. Don't believe what you're being told about campus anti-Semitism. This student goes on to write, here's what you're not being told. The most pressing threats to our safety as Jewish students do not come from tents on campus. Instead, they come from the Columbia administration inviting police onto campus, certain faculty members, and third-party organizations that dox undergraduates. Frankly, I regret the fact that writing to confirm the safety of Jewish Ivy League students feels justified in the first place. I have not seen many pundits hand-wringing over the safety of my Palestinian colleagues, mourning the deaths of family members, or the destruction of Gaza's cherished universities. I am wary of a hysterical campus discourse, gleefully amplified by many of the same charlatans who have turned DEI into a slur that draws attention away from the ongoing slaughter in the Gaza Strip and settler violence in the occupied West Bank. We should be focusing on the material reality of war, the munitions our government is sending to Israel, which killed Palestinians by the thousands, and the Americans participating in the violence. It's worth noting that many Jewish students, many Jewish people are part of these human rights organizations coming to the advocacy of Palestinians. So, again, that's something that is very rarely, if ever, brought up in these sorts of conversations in mass media. It has just been, it's not surprising, but frustrating to see the ongoing manipulation of the narrative.